that's scary. And when you look at bats when they're flying, their body temperature goes way above 105. And it is only to counter the virus that they have inside there. So then the bats have figured out a way to counter that's why they go down. So, and that's why all the scientists every year they go down to these caves to collect species and all that from bats in order to analyze and come up with a prediction of what is going to be the virus likely going to spread.
Right.
But there's so much unknown stuff. Just don't know.
Like what?
So many unknowns that we don't know.
Oh, yeah.
That's complicated, right?
This gets under control.
Yeah. So people talk about immunity, developing an immunity, and people say that, hey, once you get it, I'm not going to get it again. When you look at them, you get it once, you're going to get it again.
Yeah.
So there's no, it's not like measles.
Okay. You guys ready?
It's like measles.
You want to start?
What? Press and hold. Press it on. And then press and hold, press it on.
Maybe. Less is power. Oh, that one. I'll give you that.
Hello.
There we go.
I'll just do a brief introduction and then turn it over to you guys. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming today. This is our first Lunch and Learn back at the DCC where we can actually serve lunch. We've been doing a couple of them virtually, so this is good to get everybody back together. So thank you. We've got U.S. Bank here and Joe Mitchell and his team to do a presentation for us today. So we're very excited to hear from him, and I'm just going to turn it right over.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Eric. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this Lunch and Learn in the COVID world and being compliant. I hope everybody got a lunch and a little gift box from us. But this actually was something that I've been a Daybreak resident now since 2014. Kind of looking at what I do as a banker, so I work on the commercial side of the bank, and you see a lot of training that we get on phishing and scams that are coming across the phones and all that stuff, and you kind of become diligent and you learn about it. Excuse me. But about a year and a half ago, I was actually over at my parents' house in Harriman. They're in their 80s, and they were both home that day, and I happened to be in there, and all of a sudden I hear my mom in the bedroom, and she's like, "Oh, hi, Jeremy." She answered the phone. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Her grandson calling from New York in the middle of the day, which wasn't normal. Didn't think much about it, and all of a sudden she's talking to him, and I kind of just hear her on the phone and not paying much attention, and all of a sudden I hear my dad upstairs on the phone, and they're like talking about something's wrong, and they need to get some information and an address, and my mom comes walking in the kitchen and says, "Oh, Joey, I gotta get the address for Jeremy." I said, "Well, what's going on, Mom?" "Oh, he's been in an accident and he's in the police station." So I pick up the phone and I say, "Hey, Jeremy, it's Joey, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, I sound kind of funny because I hurt my nose in a car accident and then blah, blah." And I said, "Jeremy, what's your middle name?" Click. And he hung up. So he had my mom and dad both on the phone thinking it was their grandson, because when they call, they say, "Hi, Grandma," and they immediately say and give them a first piece of information, which is a name. And that starts the whole mechanism of how phishing and spear phishing and telephone phishing and all the things that these criminals are doing to get your money, and they're getting very good at it. I'm sure everybody else gets the 10 phone calls a week from the solicitor in an area code you don't know or whatever. But one of the things U.S. banks should get put together is something to think about and some outlines of how to protect yourself against this kind of fraud. So we're happy to be here. Sunil Singh is our branch with the branches downtown, and he's graciously come out to help me do this presentation since he does it more than I do. But again, thank you for the time. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, good afternoon. Depending on where we are, right? So my goal today in terms of coming out and sharing this with you is to maybe give you some ideas in terms of the types of scams that are going on out there, some of the things that you should be aware of. And then I'm also going to maybe share some stories with you, some of the personal experiences that I've had in terms of individuals that have become victims to this. Okay? So when you're talking about financial scams, there is an FBI website that you can go to, and it has got a whole list of all of the different scams that are currently going around. So some of these you might be familiar with, and I'm going to talk through them and give you a brief explanation of what that particular scam means or how is that perpetrated. So the first one is advanced fee scams. This you may have heard of as Nigerian scams, where somebody says you just got this huge inheritance. However, to get this money for you, there is a certain fee that needs to be paid. Okay, so that's known as advanced fee scams. Then there is the charity fraud. The charity fraud one is where you receive either a phone call, you receive a mail, or you receive a email. In the old days, when you talk about charity fraud, there used to be these subscription type of letters that would come your way, right? And then it'll show you a picture of a child, mostly. And what they did was they preyed on people's emotions in order to get you hooked and get you bought into the idea. And they're not asking for a lot of money. All they're asking for is maybe $5 or $10. So you take that $5 or $10 number and you multiply that by tens of thousands of people. Now, not everybody's going to respond to it. The perpetrators are very, very mindful of the fact that there's going to be a very small percentage that respond. So if you sent out, let's say, 100,000 of these mails, and you got only 10,000 people to respond, and they donated only $5, you make a lot of money, right? So that's what they are actually preying on in terms of the vulnerabilities and the emotional aspects and the emotional makeups of the individual when they receive these mails. The other one that is making rounds nowadays is counterfeit prescription. You see all of these advertisements about, you know, a new drug or a cheaper drug or whatever it may be. So these are counterfeit prescriptions. Just be mindful of that as well. When you're talking about the other fraud abuse, we'll touch on it in a moment. Fraudulent cosmetics. This is becoming big time as well, especially when you have so many influencers on the social media, right? People that are saying, hey, if you use this product, you'll look much younger. You use this, you're going to get a beautiful skin, whatever it may be. So be mindful of that as well. The other one is funeral and cemetery. You receive those in mail at home. Just be mindful of those. Be mindful of the source. If you're not familiar with the funeral home or whatever, just disregard it. Identity theft. This is the most common one where Joe alluded to it, where somebody calls you, starts to win you over, and most of the time they pretend to know who you are, and hoping that with their confidence they'll be able to get you to start speaking a little bit more and start divulging personal information. These could be social security numbers. They already know your address. When they make that call, they've already figured out your address. So the key pieces of information they're looking for is your social security number. And then if they can convince you, they'll then start going to the next aspect, which is asking for personal details of bank accounts and things like that. So those are some of the most common ones. You've heard of the Ponzi schemes. Utah has some recent cases that were highlighted. You've also heard of the investment frauds. Investment frauds where somebody comes in and says, hey, if you invest this amount of money with me, you're going to get a 20% return or whatever, some ridiculous amount like that. And then I talked about Nigerian letters, so you're familiar with that. And what Joe was talking about is the event where a grandparent gets called. That's also known as ransomware. It's classified as ransomware as well, where somebody is saying that I'm in trouble. I'm the grandchild, I'm in trouble, and I need X amount of money to pay a fine or whatever it may be to get out. And the other ransomware that is making the runs nowadays is when somebody gets control of your computer and locks it up. I had a case where this gentleman thought that he was talking to somebody from Microsoft, and the story that was given to him is they are going to optimize his computer so that it works faster and he's able to download stuff faster. And using that scheme, they took control of his computer and locked it. When they locked it, then now they're asking for X amount of dollars so that they can give him access back to his computer. Nowadays, most people carry a lot of personal information stored in computers and phones, right? So when that goes out of action for us, we get really desperate, and in our desperation, we end up making some bad choices and paying these guys money. Joe alluded to the spoofing and the phishing, where somebody is pretending to be a bank, for example. You've heard about this, right? Where an email comes in asking you to disclose social security numbers, whatever it is. When you look at the address from where it is coming, it appears to be coming from US Bank or Wells Fargo or whatever it may be. It'll have a logo and all that. It's called phishing, where somebody's trying to get you hooked and download your personal information. So these are some of the things. There's a whole list that you can get on the FBI website. Okay? My other goal today is to kind of talk a little bit about the elder financial exploitation, what you need to know, and then I'm going to take you through this particular slide. It's going to give you some more pieces of information in terms of how to recognize it, how to react, and how do you report. The most common reason a lot of these don't get reported is very simple. Upon learning that you have just been scammed, we are ashamed. We are ashamed to share it with our friends and our family because we don't want them to judge us, because they'll now start judging us for our decision making, right? So that is the most common reason why a lot of these scams go unreported. I just don't want somebody else to know how silly I was to divulge my personal information. So that's the reason, okay? Let's talk about the other financial exploitation and how it happens, right? It can be outright theft when somebody's taken control of your debit card, credit card, or your account information. Manipulating or coercing. I recently had a case where somebody was being manipulated. Somebody was being told that they just won this huge amount of money through Publishers Clearinghouse. You guys have heard of that scam? Publishers Clearinghouse scams, right? And Publishers Clearinghouse, when you look at that particular scheme, if you are a legitimate winner, they pay you X amount of dollars every week or every month for the rest of your life, kind of thing, right? So this individual got hooked into it. They sent a small amount of money as a token, and they thought, yep, this is all real, and now they're asking for X amount of dollars to be paid in before the rest of the month gets released. So just be mindful about that. Borrowing against the value of seniors' homes to access money. So what we have seen is people are being manipulated to take a second mortgage on their home. And once they do that, the other party has already got access to their account, so they're able to move money using your online password or whatever it may be. So just be mindful about those as well. And misusing the power of attorney documents. Especially for seniors, the moment you are signing a power of attorney document, you have to be careful who you are nominating as the person to take charge of your affairs in the event that you pass. So be mindful of that. Some of the other things to think about is learning the common financial exploitation schemes, just listening to people's stories. Update all your will and your beneficiary information on a regular basis, or at least go down and take a look at it, whether they still remain relevant. Share your goals and plans for the future with carefully chosen individuals. So don't start sharing all of these pieces of information with strangers. Somebody that can listen into those stories and then start scheming things. And carefully consider who may access your account. So each one of us should start thinking about, in the event that I'm unable to access my accounts for whatever reason, a medical condition or whatever it may be, who do I want to nominate to be able to access my accounts and make sure that bills continue to be paid, including any emergency and medical care that I might need. Monitor your account statements. Nowadays, there's a lot more stuff that is available for you electronically, so you don't have to wait the 30-day cycle for the statements. If you can access the account online, you're able to pick on things immediately. And as I go through this other presentation, I'll share with you some of the other things that you can do, especially with your banking, so that you are on top of anything that happens with your account. And review your financial institutions' products and services for ways that you can guard against exploitation. And that's going to be something that I'm going to cover in here. Sounds good? So far, things make sense? Okay. All right, so we'll go through some pieces of information in terms of financial bills and as it applies to elders. And the reason it applies to elders more so than, well, when I say an elder, it is 18 and over, right? Anybody that is 18 and over is subject to this financial bills. When you look at the bottom part of it, it'll talk about the numbers. Some of the numbers, the hard numbers, is $3 billion. $3 billion is what appears to be reported. That's the amount of money that the seniors, and when I say seniors, it's wrong, right? It's elders lose, anybody over 18 years of age. But the unreported number, by some estimates, is as high as $36 billion. A lot of money. So because it is a lot of money, people are getting more sophisticated. So you don't have your regular Joe down the road who's a burglar, and then all of a sudden he starts to steal people's money. These are professionals. These are people that have got hacking capabilities, people that have got people skills in communication, people that are able to win you over with either a written text or a verbal text. So that's a lot of money. So you can see why it is attractive for people to get involved with this. It's stunning, right? $36 billion is a lot of money. So that's why people have made a profession out of this, which is scamming people. So why do scammers target older adults? When you look at the generational gap in terms of the older adults that we're talking about today, this is a group that has gone through a phase, a time in life where things were a little bit more trustworthy. They've had some strong relationships with people, they were able to form good friendship bonds, family bonds, and they were more trusting. And as a result of that, they are now becoming the targets. Some of the things that they're doing is they make us hopeful. I had a case where somebody thought that they were going to get this windfall, and they were going to actually get rid of a number of debts that they had accumulated over the years, and then in their retirement, they were going to have a much cleaner slate, and they'll be able to enjoy their life. Some of the times, the scams that they perpetrate is thinking that we are doing the right thing. When I talk about those charity scams, we think we are doing the right thing by giving $10 or $15 to the particular charity. So they are basically playing on making us feel proud of the things that we've just done. Or the last one, which is another one that they have used, which is making you scared. When you talk about the grandchild in an accident, a grandchild, we had a case where a grandchild was in Mexico, supposedly in Mexico, and he was not caught. and he needed to pay X amount of money for whatever in order to get out. So making the grandparents scared so that they can part away with that money. So types of scams, again, very similar to the list that I went through with the FBI list. Sweepstakes. Romance scams is a common one that we start seeing nowadays, right? Whereby somebody, you got all of these internet sites whereby people are now communicating with each other much more regularly, and through that we are seeing these scams coming up. The IRS impersonation scams, you've heard of this. Somebody calls and says, hey, I'm calling from the IRS. You owe us X amount of money. If you don't call us, you're going to be thrown into jail. You heard those, right? You've heard it on TV as well. Charity scams, we talked about it. Healthcare scams, we talked a little bit about it. Telemarketing scams, this can be a whole list of things, right? Where somebody calls you and then gets you engaged in a conversation and then starts to direct you to a product or service, which you probably don't need. Tech support, we talked about how that individual, that story that I shared, his computer got locked. He was thinking that he was talking to Microsoft and they were going to optimize his PC, and somebody took control of his computer and locked it, and now we're asking for money. Family emergency, we talked about that case of grandchild. People are even being scammed by their own family members and caretakers. So when we start to see the financial abuse that is happening in the seniors community, most of the time we are also saddened to see that it is a very close family member, a very close friend, or it could be a caregiver. So if you are thinking about some of these scams that you either witnessed or heard about, you'll realize very, very quickly that each one of these cases, somebody is playing on winning you over, winning your trust. And it's always good to be a little bit careful and ask questions twice about who is the person that you are wanting to give access to certain information. Okay, let's talk about the 3 R's, which is how do we recognize, how do we react, and how do we report the moment we become victim. So recognizing is looking out for some of these key things, right? We talked about the grandson in jail needs bail money. We talked about, you've won a lottery, all of a sudden you're going to become rich and famous. We talked about you need to donate to a cause, and unfortunately sometimes you see the picture that comes with it, it saddens your heart, and then they get into you and you say, you know what's $5? And then you owe more money on your taxes. You see the IRS one that you're talking about, which is really funny when you think about it. These guys know that every tax cycle, the newspapers, the TV, everybody's covering these type of scams, but they continue to do it. And the reason they continue to do it is because they know that if they target an audience of, let's say, 100,000, there will be a small percentage of people that will fall victim to it, and that's what they have to play on. Hey. Now let's talk about how do you manage your affairs as far as your banking is concerned. And what I'm going to share with you is not only limited to if you bank with Yes Bank. Doesn't matter who you bank with. These are some of the things that you got to start seriously thinking about. Online and mobile banking, right? This is a way that you can be informed and up to date with whatever is happening on your account. I have had cases where people were able to pick up on a fraud on their account simply because they had online access, and they were able to pick it up much quicker than you waiting for a statement to come in. Your statement comes in, and it's 15 days after the statement cutoff cycle. And if this had happened in the first week of the month, you're already 35, 40 days late to the event. So having online and mobile access allows you the ability to see things as they happen. Set up text and email alerts. Nowadays, everybody has got, well, almost everybody has got access to their phones where they are getting text messages. And most text messages nowadays are actually unlimited, right? So you don't pay a separate fee per text that you receive. It is already inbuilt in the pricing package. So setting up text alerts, and I'll share with you an example that I have on my phone. Every time I use my card to make a purchase, the moment my card is processed, a message comes to my phone. And that tells me that my transaction has just taken place. So in the event somebody else was charging a transaction to my card, I know right there and then. In terms of your deposits and withdrawals, you can set up limits, saying if there is a transaction that is above this, please send me a message, right? And that is very, very relevant for withdrawals. Most people don't mind too much about a deposit, but withdrawal is something that you want to be really worried about. Low or negative balances. This is an alert that comes to your phone or to your email letting you know that your balance has gone below a certain number that you have nominated. And one of the reasons to choose this is in the event of a check coming in and causing an overdraft, yes, it alerts you so that you can cover that check. But more importantly, if somebody is taking money and drawing, you know that you carry an average balance in the account that you never go below. This is an alert that basically flags to you something's not right with your account. Payments coming due and more. So when you have set yourself up for online banking or mobile banking, you can set up the automatic payments through the accounts, and then it sends you an alert saying, hey, you got a power bill coming up, or you got a phone bill coming up, whatever it may be. So the steps that you can take to protect, make sure you set up the account alerts when available. Check with your bank, whoever you bank with. Check your balances online through the 24-hour banking or bank statements frequently. When I say bank statements, you know, if you've got access to the account online or on the phone, please do that as the first step. Don't wait for the bank statements to come in. And check your credit report as often as possible. Each one of us is allowed to pull one of our credit reports from the bureau once a year, and that is at no cost. So be mindful of that and use them because it's available to you. So financial documents, including your checks, in a safe but easy to access location. I know we mentioned checks out here, but you'll find that checks are becoming less and less in terms of its usage. And one of the reasons is because it gets stolen in mail, it never reaches the party, so you're better off either setting up an electronic payment through ACH, which is allowing the company to debit, or you do it as a bill pay, which is you setting it up on your own online. And think carefully about who has access to the account. We talked a little bit about power of attorneys. There is something that is starting to happen in our industry, which is we are allowing people to, irrespective that you are not an account owner, but you can allow an individual what they call shared access to the account. They're able to view your accounts. And this is very, very relevant for situations where somebody is wanting a little bit more help in terms of their finances are concerned, and they might have a son or a daughter that has got shared access. They're able to take a look at, things and activities on the account for you. But be mindful in terms of who you give these kind of accesses to. And talk about your finances with only a few trusted people. We just don't know who's sitting next door and listening to us, and he's gonna start spewing things and try and win us over. Stay up to date with the latest scams. I shared with you a list of current scams that you can find on the FBI website. We have got our TV stations out here. They're pretty good at sharing some new scams that are hitting our city. Okay, so just be mindful of that and go to these websites and read from time to time what are some of the latest scams so you don't fall victim to it. Caregivers, if possible, set up a legal document clearly defining your role and responsibilities, including any limitations in terms of power of attorney and guardian. So that limits the things that a caregiver is able to do for you. And let's talk about the steps that you can do to, the things that you don't do in order to be safe. Don't report your financial power of attorney to someone you don't know or trust. Okay? Share personal information only with people you don't know, including over the phone, online, or social media. And don't send money to people or institutions you don't know. They might come up with a very sad story, but be mindful that it could be somebody that is, it could be somebody that's wanting to get access to this, what they have identified as a potential for money making. Don't allow strangers to come into your home. You've got utility workers that are coming in. Just be mindful in terms of the places that they can have access to, and don't leave important documents in view. Most of the time when somebody comes to your phone, the reason why they do certain things is because it was exposed, it was available to them, and they saw an opportunity. So limit that opportunity. When you've got a service provider coming to your home, keep these things stored in a secure location. Don't pay for an offer that you don't understand. Okay? Don't sign blank checks, and I've seen this happen in the past where just to make it easy, people would sign a few checks and just keep it around so that, either a caregiver can fill it out and pay the bill for them or whatever it may be. Don't do that, because when you have blank checks out there, anybody can write down whatever amount that they need and try and cash it. Don't share your login information unless it's with your trusted family member or caregiver. Login information, I think I told earlier on, this is becoming very, very common when somebody is on the phone with you or trying to get information from you using an email. They pretend that they are calling from the legitimate authority, let's say a bank, and then they ask you to divulge all of these personal information. Keep an eye out for any previously uninvolved family members or friends seeking to get account access. So if you have a family member that you haven't authorized on your account, just be mindful, and sometimes we in the bank would flag it to you that, hey, there's an inquiry made by this person, and is this true and correct? Do know how to report these scams. Your first step should be to report the problem to police, and the reason we do that is because it gets recorded. Yes, we do know that our police department is quite busy with some of the other issues that they have to deal with. They're not going to start running after the scam that we have just reported. But just by the sake of reporting it, we are recording the events so that in the event the individual is caught and they're taking these, they're investigating further the activities of this individual, they can tie into as many as possible the crimes that they've committed along the way. So if you report it, we need it from the bank perspective. When you're filing in a report, we need to know if you are filing a police report. Contact your bank's fraud center, and most of these organizations, including credit unions, have got a 1-800 number that you can access 24 hours. So reach out to them the moment you have detected something wrong with your account. And you should contact the fraud department at any of the big 3 credit agencies as well, especially when you know your social security has been compromised. The moment you know your social security has been compromised, reach out to these individuals and put a block on your credit, so that way they are not able to use your social security and gain credit, whether it be a credit card, mortgage, or whatever it may be. And contact the adult protective services in your county or state. I found here in Utah that our adult protective services is pretty good. When I say pretty good, they're very, very responsive. They get on to the case quickly. They make a phone call to the individual that's been affected, and they work you through the process. And if you've been a victim of fraud theft, you'll want to file a report to the Federal Trade Commission via identitytheft.gov. If you can go there, that's great, but if you have already lodged it with the police and the bank, most of the time that's how people go. But if you have got time and you can also go in and report it to the Federal Trade Commission as well. Learn more in terms of how to protect yourself and your loved ones, taking online course. When I say online course, you don't have to register and pay people big bucks to take the course, right? Most of these courses are not available online free of charge. You can just go in and read the pieces of information, which will help you protect yourself from fraud. And then of course, US Bank has a website, usbank.com/avoid scams, and you can go in and access these courses. Anybody can access it from their own computers. Okay, so that brings me to the end of this particular presentation, and now I'd like to kind of open it up for some questions that you might have along the way through the presentation that have probably popped in your mind and you said, I wonder how that works, and what if I was a victim of this, how do I handle it? So, yes?
Out of all the scams that are reported, there's several that actually get caught.
Yes, so there's a number of, and like I said, the purpose of reporting to the police is so that they can start registering these cases. And whilst they're not actively pursuing these individuals, unless there's big dollars involved, but whilst they're actively working on a case and they identify that this individual was, let's say they find somebody for some other crime and they find a pocket full of credit cards with him. That then leads them to all of these other reports that possibly has been filed in the particular zip code, where they start asking and interrogating this person and then making and building up that case. So yes, reporting is necessary. When people do get caught, they can tie in all of these other cases. You've heard recently where law enforcement has gotten involved, it is to do with big dollars, where there's a ridiculous amount of money that has been lost through, whether it was individual or through organizations or groups of people, and that's when they get involved and they try to get to the bottom of it in terms of where it's from. A number of this, unfortunately, is happening from outside of the country as well. You see a lot more of these happening outside of the country. Any other questions?
Are there any other protections, Sunil, like with credit card and debit card fraud? The bank does protect consumers to a certain extent. If somebody gets a hold of either your credit card number or your account number and tries to do with these scams and the way they get different information like gift cards and other means of cash, what kind of protections do people have that they should be aware are available and are not available, and why there's a difference?
So if you're able to detect something wrong with your account, whether it is a checking account with a debit card or a credit card, whatever it may be, if you're able to detect it in a timely manner and report it to your financial institution, most of the time you'll find that it is going to be honored, meaning they will reimburse you for your loss. The only times that it becomes a little bit of a question is if you had shared that access willingly with somebody and somebody has now breached your trust and done something wrong with your account. But most of the time, if you can detect it in a timely manner and go and talk to your financial institution, you'll find that they'll be willing to work with you and even work towards a resolution which would end up being reimbursement for you. I always say to people, if you are doing a transaction and it is using a debit card or a credit card, you have a slightly higher degree of protection than a check. When you've written a check, what we are seeing nowadays is checks are getting washed as well. So yeah, it'll have everything good, your signature and all that is going to be good, but the amount that you've written on that check or the payee information that you've written on that check has now been altered to somebody else. So with a electronic transaction of a credit card or debit card, there is a slightly higher degree of protection in those transactions. Yes.
In the event that you get this scam where they commandeer your computer, is the best thing to do just turn it right off?
Yeah, the best thing is to turn it right off, because turning it off stops the access that they gain into your account. The next thing you gotta do is start to do a professional in terms of, hey, this is what the breach looks like for me. What are some of the things that I can do to safeguard? And one of the things to think about is what types of information was stored on the computer and what type of access did these individuals have, right? And you mentioned that if somebody has already commandeered your computer, then they've got information and they can go to any piece of information that you've got stored in the computer. So be mindful of that and quickly get in touch with the individual. So let's say you've got bank information data, get hold of the bank and put in blocks on your account, right? If it is other pieces of information where somebody can go to another organization and pretend to be you, it could be, a healthcare card or whatever it may be. I don't know what they can do with it, but at least go in and flag to them that, hey, I've got a situation, I want you to place an alert on my account, so that in the event that something or somebody is trying to do something with this information, my personal information, you know that it may not be me, please give me a call. Yes, Dave.
A couple of things real quick. I really liked how you talked about the alerts that you receive on your card. I'll share a personal experience. I'm sure everybody's gone through Costco and seen the Costco credit cards you can get, and a lot of people have them. And I have one, and I don't use it a whole lot unless I go into Costco. And all of a sudden one day I received an email that I was approaching my credit limit. And I thought, that's impossible. I don't use it, and I pay it off. And so I opened the app on my phone and logged in, and I saw all these large purchases. And I thought, okay, well, I didn't make those. And so I called Citi and I said, hey, look, I didn't do these. And they started looking into the transactions, and what had happened was they'd ordered it, they had my address, they had my card, and when they ordered these items to be shipped, they were being shipped to my house, but they caught them in transit and gave a new address. And so I think a lot of times we're used to waiting for those statements to come, like you mentioned, those 30 days, and by being a little bit more proactive and checking daily or checking every couple of days or having those alerts, you can prevent that and not kind of, I'm on my, I think, 4th Citi card now, and Sunil said a lot of great points, and that's another question I want to ask you here in a second, but it's not common to see a lot of this fraud. I had a client, if you don't mind me sharing an experience real quick, who I spoke to, and he's a business client at US Banks, and he said to me, we were having problems with somebody who got a hold of his checkbook, and this had gone on for probably about 8 months, and we kept changing his account number and whatnot, giving him new accounts, and I finally asked him, I said, have you had any other issues? He said, oh, I get calls all the time from the credit card companies I have asking me if I opened up a credit card for this or opened up a credit card for that, and I said, well, why? Obviously somebody's got your personal information. Have you froze or put a freeze on your credit bureaus? And he said, well, why do I want to do that? And this was the interesting part, as he said, it's so common for people to get your information. And I said, it's really not that common if you take some of these steps that Sunil has spoken about. And I think one of the most important ones, significant ones, is those freezes you can put on your credit with the credit bureaus. Because then if you go to, say you go to Sunil one day and, hey Sunil, I need to open a credit card, and he pulls your credit, we can't pull your credit until you call into the credit bureau and release that freeze. Yep. And so you've been with the bank for such a long time. Maybe you can speak a little bit to how really rampant fraud is and how often we see it.
Yeah. This is actually the 3rd country that I'm living in. So this is not unique to the US. I'm from Fiji. I also had an opportunity to live and work in New Guinea as well. So I've seen it in these 2 countries as well. And I'm going to relate to a story which dates back to I don't think it was 95. I think it was 1997. And in 1997, what I was seeing when I was working for the bank in the beginning, what I was seeing was people were going for checks, intercepting checks. Whether it is being stolen from the office or from your home, or it is being intercepted as you are putting it in the mailbox. And what they were doing is they were actually washing these checks, creating a new payee new amount and putting it through. And the target group at that point in time was businesses. And the reason it was businesses is because businesses have an accounts payable team, an accounts receivable team, and most of the time the owner themselves is not involved in the process. So what is happening is the fraudsters were actually preying on the vulnerabilities of the internal system. When a statement gets released, it's 35, 40 days later. When it gets to the desk of an accounts payable person, chances are the accounts payable person is not very familiar with all of the different aspects of the company. And a check comes in and slides through where it has got a brand new name and that individual's name doesn't exist on the ledger yet. They think it is a new client, a new vendor that they have to pay. And most of the time, they're allowing this to go through, and that's what these criminals were targeting. So, when you look at the scams that we are seeing today, they have just made these scams a little bit more sophisticated. From the paper checks that we are seeing, they're now starting to access your electronic data in terms of your credit card, your debit card numbers, etc. Be mindful about, when you are also shopping most of the time, and most cards nowadays have a technology where the card remains in your hand. You don't pass it to somebody who takes it to a back office and then runs it and then comes back, right? And technology is going there whereby we are wanting to see that the card remains in the hand of the individual and they're in full control. But, in saying that, we've also seen the most recent cases of where they skim the information on your card, right? And there was a time when this was happening at gas stations as well, where they come in and plug in a gadget over the gas station phone, and when you're using a card, it collects the data. So to say, what are some of the scams that I'm starting to see and more readily is the electronic type of scams, right? The Nigerian scams have always been there where they play on the vulnerabilities of an individual and a lot of these is driven by, the hope that I have got this money and it's gonna, put me out of my misery in terms of all of these debts that have accumulated along the way. So the Nigerian one has been there for a long, long time. The newer ones that are coming in is the gift cards, the charities, playing on people's emotions. Playing on people's emotions, whether it be on a phone, on an email, or through I talked about the romantic scams, right? Where somebody has gone to a dating website and they get involved in a chat conversation with this individual, they absolutely do it, and that's how they start playing on these. And a number of cases we have found that I had a case where somebody he thought that he was actually chatting to somebody in Asia. We don't know, right? Nowadays in technology, we don't know where this individual is sitting. Whether that individual is in Asia or could be our next door neighbor, we don't know. So this individual got hooked into it and he thought that he was communicating with this person in Asia, and the scam that they were using is either buying iTunes gift cards, because those are redeemable, or asking you to send money through Western Union. When you're sending money through Western Union, guess what happens? You're just giving them a 10-digit number, which they then take it to an agent. Doesn't matter where, it doesn't say where that agent is. They just present the 10-digit number and the ID that matches that name under which it's been sent, and they take the money. So those are some of the most common ones that we're starting to see happen much more regularly.